Hi, everybody. Welcome to our next series of talks. And this one is all about breaking the bias. And today we have Ngozi Penson joining us all the way from New Zealand. And we are so grateful to have you here, Ngozi. I would just like to say that we appreciate your time and your brilliant, brilliant topic is just so current, and it is a great fit for this series of talks and really for the theme of International Women's Day 2022. So I'm really grateful to have you here. And for those of you who don't know Ngozi, she is a management consultant, board member, and educator who works across several diverse sectors in New Zealand. And she's currently in Auckland. So she focuses mainly on participation and representation in governance and leadership. And she's also a keen advocate for improving the participation and representation of women in leadership. And she has also initiated and implemented various successful projects that address inequity and barriers. So, like I say, you are the perfect fit for this wonderful Break the Bias theme that we have this year. And I'd like to hear from you, Ngozi, what your interpretation of breaking the bias is within your industries that you work in the sectors that you work in.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really, really excited to be here. And it's 2021 and celebrating International Women's Day. And I suppose let's not forget that New Zealand was the first country in the whole world to give women a vote. So it's really befitting to participate in this presentation that you're doing today, or this event. Breaking the bias. Well, I'm a Black African woman, and I suppose I have in the past experienced lots of biases across different areas. But more importantly, I think, people not recognizing or acknowledging what you bring to the table due to various perception or stereotypes or ingrained, ingrained knowledge from whether it be a culture or community. All those things, I suppose, lead to people being biased about, I suppose, myself and many others that look like me, or women of color in general. So just prejudging people before you actually engage with them. I think that is one biggie, where that misconception and not knowing or understanding, or I would probably say ignorance as well. People not taking the time to educate themselves on other people or other cultures, especially if you are engaging with them. So for me, I think just that lack of knowledge, and that people are not so keen. I'm generalizing here, but this is from experience, not so keen to, I suppose, take that next step to educate themselves about certain things or about certain people or about certain issues. Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite scary to see that, and to also experience that, how people sort of judge you if you say that you are from Africa or you've lived in Africa, and they just seem to have a whole sort of preconceived notion about what you are and what you're about. And, I think that they automatically assume fraud, corruption, etc. And I think, in particular, because of your background being a Nigerian born, it is something that is very prevalent, and we see it all over, not only in New Zealand, but I suppose across the globe, and certainly within Africa itself. So that is really difficult. But as an African in general, we face all sorts of bias. And so I'm actually a fifth generation South African. I don't know if I told you that. Yeah, so I'm pretty much as South African as they come. But yeah, so my family traveled over from India in the 1800s. So that's why I'm now fifth generation South African. And yeah, it's been interesting to see, and to have myself listen to what you have just said, Yeah, it's pretty shocking to realize and to see the points of connection that we have as well there, where people are very prejudiced. And yeah, they just make all sorts of assumptions, and there's a whole lot of bias about a range of different things. So it's yeah, I'm sorry that you've experienced that, and I can relate, perhaps not on the same level, of course, but yes, I do understand what you're saying, and I'm sure many women across the globe listening to you right now realize what you're saying and empathize with what you have to say. So I think one of the other things that I would like to ask you is what has bothered you the most personally in terms of bias that has been directed at you?
Hmm. So before, I mean, I left Nigeria many, many years ago, and I have encountered a few people that when I say I'm from Nigeria, they they make a comment like, "Oh wow, you have good English," and I'm kind of taken aback, like, "Hey, don't you know anything about Nigeria? You know, we were a British colony, we spoke English and all that stuff." So things like that, that perception, like, oh, you say you're Nigerian, it's like, oh wow, you speak good English, you know. So that is that lack of, I suppose, ignorance and lack of maybe people not educating themselves. Personally, it's also my name, Ngozi, because I've been actually, I've had people tell me a few times to, oh, you know, maybe if you change your name, you could progress further career-wise, especially when I moved to a certain country. Yeah, I was, I suppose I was job hunting or seeking employment, and a recruitment consultant, really lovely lady. I mean, you know, she was just trying to be helpful, I said, but yeah, but she said, look, you've got really great CV and all that, but yeah, I recommend you change your name, because recruiters or, you know, hiring managers, they might get put off and not understand that you actually speak good English. So, but having left Africa many years ago, or Nigeria, it was sort of it was my link back to Africa, my name, and it meant something really, it meant something to me. I mean, translated, it means blessing. So you're asking me to say I should change my name from blessing to Ngozi to something else, you know? So I think that, and there are many that I have, you know, many people that I've encountered that have similar stories. It's not really unique to me. So I think that for me was a shock at the time, because really Ngozi is the most common name in Nigeria, like the most, it's like Jane. So it's so common that every, you know, even parents don't want to call their kids Ngozi because it's so common, you know. But that is changing. That's changing with, I suppose, with you have more people, you know, that are famous now, that are, you know, that bear Ngozi. You have Ngozi Chimamanda Adichie, who's a fantastic author, and you have the world, I think it's the World Bank, the head of World Bank, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. So we have many famous people now that are Ngozi. So yeah, I don't get that anymore. But you still get people that, oh wow, you know, yeah. So I think for me that's one of the things. And the hair. Because growing up in Africa as well, we don't really appreciate our hair, you know, and I would say that is from the continent, because all we do there is the hair extensions and the braids and all that, right? So actually, this is the first time in my adult life that I've actually had to wear my hair out. Because also another country where I lived, somewhere in the Middle East, it was almost like you will not be employed if you have hair like this, right? The manager was very straight that we do not want this hair, you have to do something to it, you know. So those are biases that really don't mean, it doesn't impede me in accomplishing things that I want to do, right? But for other people, I don't know, it's a barrier for them, whether to engage with me or um, or to think that I'm not going to be able to do what I need to do because I have a certain name or I have a certain look or hair. So things like that. And there are many that experience such biases. It could be subtle. I mean, they may not say it, but you can tell that. Yes, you will get that look when you walk into a room and you're the only one with the big fro and the strange name. So things like that. But I'm hoping that, I suppose, with 2022, things will change. Yes, so I think for me those two things has been really, it hasn't stopped me really. I wouldn't say that it's really stopped me from accomplishing or doing the things that I want to do. But there may have been people that have had to take that next step to change their names just so they can fit in, or have their hair in a certain way so they can fit in. So it happens. It's just it's just what it is. But putting, I suppose, highlighting things like this might help people think about comments in the future. Like, when you see a name, don't ask people to change that name, because I think for the African culture, the name actually means a lot. Parents don't just give names for the sake of it. It means something to the person that is naming that child. So to then ask them to change it, it's almost like a blessing being passed on from your parents to yourself. And to change that is pretty much you taking that blessing away from you. So I think the more we talk about these things, the more we address it, the more we bring it to the fore, for people to actually understand the I suppose the relevance and the importance of name in certain cultures. So there needs to be some kind of cultural competency education for people to have to go and do it themselves, to educate themselves around what does a name mean, a name that is not English. What does it mean to this person, yeah.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. I mean, so the sort of the concept of having a kind of cultural EQ is it should actually be a kind of prerequisite for people, especially if you're working across the globe. And I think that for me, I certainly saw, like, I came in with this very naive view where, people will work with us because, I mean, this is the global village. Surely everybody would want to work with you. I mean, if you show up and you have integrity and you're willing to work with people, that they would automatically. And then you just sort of see all of these conservative people sort of blocking away and saying, no, that's not how things can go down here. And that was very interesting for me personally. But yes, absolutely, with regard to names, that is somebody, whoever it is in your family, or whoever is conferring the name, is actually conferring you with an identity, and that identity is tied to your whole life. And for people to say, well, you should change your name because it's not something that we're used to, is really shocking. But I suppose I can also relate on a personal level, because people have this sort of mental block, like they can't pronounce my name. They're just like, oh no, we can't pronounce that, and they won't even try, or they'll try, but it's like it really isn't trying to pronounce it. It's just like, well, this is too hard for me, I'm not going to do it. So yeah, it's and has that been something that you have experienced as well?
Oh yeah, and I do try to help people pronounce it or write it phonetically, to say this is how you pronounce it, but just give it a go. I don't mind if you don't get it right 100%, but give it a go. So I used to have Ngozi, and then I have a middle name which is English, and then my last name. And when I meet people, they would just go straight for the middle name because it's English. So I decided, like, okay, I'm gonna take that off. I don't want that middle name. I just want to be Ngozi. So look, just try, make an effort to. It's only 5 letters, for goodness sakes, right? It's just 5. It's 5 letters. It's not that hard. So yeah, I just I said just give it a go. I honestly don't mind if you pronounce it incorrectly, but I just want to make sure. I just want to see that you actually making an effort. To just. And I think it's also recognizing me, that I'm there, and that's me, right? So especially having kind of moved away from Nigeria for such a long time, it is, like I said earlier, it's my link back there, and I feel connected with that name to Africa. So it doesn't matter where I go, where I live, as long as I'm Ngozi, I still feel like I have that connection to Africa. And it grounds me because, it is who I am. It's my identity. And I don't want to lose that, right? I don't want to lose that. That is not to say that I don't want to embrace other cultures or adapt to those cultures. But I think there is a saying, I don't know if it's an African proverb, I always say it is, but that if you don't know where you've come from, you don't know where you're going, right? So it was really important to know where you've come from. Doesn't matter how bad that place is, but that's where you started. That's what got you here. So if you know where you're from, you will actually know where you're headed. So for me, I know that I grew up in Nigeria. I was raised there, the culture, everything. I love it. It's great. Yes, we have our issues, but it's fantastic. And I know where I'm going because I'm still linked to that place. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so my next question actually also sort of harkens back to something you mentioned earlier about how girls, schoolgirls in particular, wear their hair, and the kind of bias that just comes around that. It's you get sort of in trouble whether you cover your hair, whether you wear it loose, whatever style you choose. It's sort of, well, if you don't conform to this particular style, or if you don't conform to tying your hair up in this way, it's a problem. And I suppose I don't, I'm very aware of what happened in South Africa, where now people have really come to realize this is a huge issue. Whereas when we were at school, for example, people were not allowed to wear their hair however they wanted to, and you just had to conform. And now it has become an issue in the classroom and for teachers actually racially discriminating against kids. So have you seen that sort of happen in New Zealand as well, where people are really embracing their cultural heritage and and actually saying, I'm not going to accept your kind of discrimination. And I'm speaking specifically in the educational space, in the classroom. Is that kind of something that you've seen?
Yeah. I mean, from time to time, you hear in the news media, people that are being discriminated against. I mean, having lived in other countries, I would say that New Zealand is actually a very tolerant country, and you'll get bad people wherever you go. It doesn't matter what country, you will have that group that they're just out to discriminate against people. I think it was it recently in the news media about some I don't know what the person's name is, but there was an issue around a student that was attacked. I think the head covering was taken off, or that was in South Island. So you hear from time to time, you hear of things like that, and I'm sure it happens all over the world where people are being discriminated against, whether they have head coverings or whether they have Afro hair or whether they have straight hair, or there is that. It just keeps happening that we humans, we are not, I suppose, we don't tolerate other people as much as we would like to, so it is issues that is being addressed in New Zealand here. We have a lot of laws around discrimination and racism and everything like that, but you still have the odd ones that that still go that next step to discriminate against people, and you have the ones that would just do it quietly as well. And I think we humans, we tend to align ourselves to our kind. So sometimes we can also be in that position where we're removing ourselves from certain situation and just putting ourselves in this space, right? So that is a human nature, that we always move towards our own kind, but we live in a global community. We do business globally with all kinds of people. So we still have a way to go, to really be open-minded and accept people for who they are and embrace the diversity in practice, not just in policy. We want to see real application, right? Yeah. So it's something, it's a work in progress. And I think most people are doing what they can to address the issue. whenever it rears its head, it is something that is just ongoing, and we just do what we can here in New Zealand. We've had lots of issues around discrimination, with the shooting in Christchurch, the mosque shooting, and all different things that pop up from time to time. But we're working hard. I think we are really trying, because I live in Auckland. It's a very, very diverse place. We have about 213 ethnic groups in New Zealand, and they speak up to 178 languages. So it's a very, very diverse place, especially Auckland. It's very, very multicultural, So we're learning, we're working towards accepting people for who they are and how they look and what they do. I think New Zealand is the first country to give they have, marriages now, same-sex marriages, and so it's a very liberal country when it comes to that. But you still have people that discriminate, and you'll get that anywhere in the world.
So you have been working in particular in I know you work across sectors, but particularly in education and governance. So could you speak more about what kind of projects you've been, or what you've been doing in those spaces with regard to breaking biases? Because so this will obviously tie into what you've mentioned previously, but I think we'd be very keen to hear what you've spearheaded, because I think that's the right word to use. With what you've done is basically you have spearheaded initiatives, and I'm fascinated to hear exactly what you've been working on. So if you could please share a bit about that, that would be awesome.
I actually have various things that are ongoing at the moment. So I got interested in governance because I think I came across an acronym in New Zealand that is MELA, like MELAA, and it's an ethnicity classification, which is like Middle East, Latin America, and Africa, but it's grouped into one. So I was quite shocked. I'm like, oh, hang on a second. And this is statistics. I'm like, oh, wow, this is weird. Why are we grouped in? South America is over there. Africa is a huge, massive continent. And then you have the Middle East, and it's all bundled into one. So I have taken that upon myself to try and get answers, to try and understand why that has been grouped in that way. And I'm engaging with Statistics New Zealand, and I've kind of rallied other members, other people from those groups together. So it is an ongoing project that we've just launched, that we are, I suppose, seeking to understand why that is classified in that way, because there are lots of kind of disparities within the groups, and although there are similarities, but they're quite like diverse group. So that is one, just really trying to get some answers around that and having the right classification, because it's really important for people's identity, that you are identified. There are disadvantages if you are not identified, right? Because it means you actually don't exist, right? You're just not there. So that's one project. The other one is really around that governance. Like I've completed a research. I completed my postgraduate research last year, and my topic was really around representation, participation in the boardroom. We have a very diverse community in New Zealand, but there are little or no ethnic people in the boardroom. So that got me interested. I sit on various committees and boards. So when I got in there, I thought, oh, wow, there are many like me. I know so many people that are really competent. So I went on that, I initiated a research project as a fulfillment of my postgrad studies. And the topic was exploring experiences of Black African women in governance committees in New Zealand. It was a qualitative research, 17 people, women, and very diverse, range of people. And it turns out that there are a lot of barriers. So really having that data and to prove that, yes, there are barriers for women getting into the boardroom. So I'm using that information now and I'm speaking to board chairs and directors on how we can improve participation. So that is something that I think will be, is very useful. So I just engage with board chairs and other CEOs and say, let's have a look at this data and see what we can do. Because yes, you do want to improve diversity, but we want to see more action. So that's one of the things that I'm doing. In the education space, it's really about how you can work collaboratively with a multi-ethnic or diverse people in the room. So various projects around that engagement. So I'm also an engagement practitioner, and it's just looking at how best to engage with the diverse people in the space, because like I said earlier, we have to recognize the people that are in that space. So a lot of the work that I'm doing presently is really about, I suppose, removing barriers around participation and representation, because I think it's really important that people are recognized and there are no barriers to participation. The researcher told me that people are actually interested to participate, because the narrative is that Black women are not interested in governance and leadership, but that's not true. We are very interested in participating. We are competent. We're highly educated, right? We really go all the way to educate ourselves and acquire the knowledge. So we are interested in participating. It's just that the barriers, whether it's structural, systemic, or even self-imposed, we can impose barriers on ourselves, right? Because we're feeling, if you've been rejected so many times, you also, it affects your confidence to actually put yourself forward. So there is also that self-imposed barrier where we either feel like we're not competent, or we feel like we're imposters, right? Because we've had lots of opportunities where we've been rejected, and that tends to get back onto us, and we feel like, all right, okay, I better not apply for that role because I'm not going to get it, because I'm not qualified for it. No, so that is intrinsic. We have those barriers within ourselves as well, and so it's really looking at that. So I do, from time to time, I organize like leadership workshops where I bring women together and we go through, talk about leadership and talk about how you can participate even at your work, because if you could be at work, but you may be invincible, like, people don't see you because you don't put yourself forward. So if you're really aspiring to do more, to be more, to achieve more, then you really have to be visible. You have to put your hands up for projects. You have to say, yep, I'll do it, I think there's a saying from, I don't know, Richard Branson, I saw it somewhere. It's like, if somebody asks you to do something, even if you don't know it, say yes, then learn to do it, because you can actually learn. We're humans, we can learn a lot if we are open-minded and, have that growth mindset to take on opportunities and just run with it. So that's my approach anyway. I'm quite active in that. I like to do lots of different things, and I like those challenges. I think it just makes life exciting, I think.
Wow, it sounds wonderful and so interesting. And so are you working with particular age groups of women, or do you just you sort of work across the board with whoever sort of comes to your workshops, and do you have common themes that you discuss, or are these really workshops that speak to the particular needs of the people that you are dealing with at that time?
Yeah, I most of the women that I work with are like between, I suppose, just across from say 25 to 65 or 70, right? Because also there is that diversity in different sectors, especially when it comes to governance. because there might be like a youth committee that they're looking for, young adults or matured women, or retired people. So they're across a range, age range, very diverse. But I suppose the key topic really is about just having that confidence to say, I want to have a go, right? That's self-belief, because without the self-belief, then it's really hard to do anything. If you don't believe in yourself, then nobody will believe in you, right? And if you don't believe in yourself, that will come through when you engage with other people. They can tell that you don't have that confidence to do it. So really, we start with like, yeah, what are you capable of? Or what are the barriers that is holding you back from really accomplishing or just breaking through that glass ceiling? What is it? What's holding you back? So I think that's where I normally come from, that angle. Like, let's just reflect on what are the challenges, but the internal ones, because the structural ones are there, we know, and the systemic ones are there. But without removing those intrinsic barriers first, then you're not going to be able to actually take that next step to call somebody up and say, hey, I saw this thing that you advertise, I'm really interested. If you have that self-doubt, then you won't do it, right? I remember my first business. I had to go and sell, right? It's the first time that I've ever in New Zealand. I have to go and knock on the door and try and sell a product that nobody knows in New Zealand too, right? So I had to really pull myself together. And I said, what could be the worst thing that could happen? They will just say, no, we don't want it. And if they say no, I'll just walk away. So just trying to, I suppose, dramatize that, to say, I'm going to knock on the door. I'm going to tell them what I'm trying to sell. And they might say yes or no. And if they say yes, great. If they say no, I'm just going to walk away. So I think once you overcome that fear of like just pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and try new things, then yes, you can do whatever you want to do. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that that's such a huge part, of really teaching women leadership skills as well. It's not like they don't have those innately. It's just, like you say, it's inspiring confidence and realizing that you do have what it takes. And you shouldn't just sit there in the boardroom and not actually participate. You need to be an active participant, and you need to have your voice heard. And I think that that's so difficult for people who have experienced bias in particular, because like you say, it becomes a self-sabotaging cycle, and people just think, well, if I am constantly caught up in this cycle of rejection, what are the chances of me actually achieving what I want to, even though I know I'm fully capable of it?
That's so correct. That is so true. And that is a big one too, that setback. Like, once you've had that setback, for some people it's had to actually come out of that. But I always say, look, you learn from any kind of situation, right? If you get a yes, you learn from that. If you get a no, it means like, okay, what do I need to improve on? There's nothing wrong with that. But the important thing is to learn to accept rejection as an opportunity to develop and grow, right? And most people experience the same thing. So you're just not unique. Although in saying that, I would say that, being a colored woman, a Black woman, you have sort of that people judging you before you actually show what you can do. And that in itself is that barrier, where that perception, you're perceived as, okay, this person may not be able to speak good English because the name is Ngozi and they're from Nigeria. And because you are ignorant, you don't actually know that I started speaking English from like primary school, right? So you see, it's like also people, when you're not educated, or you don't have that knowledge, or you're not, I suppose, open to the world to know that some countries in Africa speak English, some speak French, some speak Zulu, Portuguese. Swahili. Yes.
Yeah.
So because if you are aware of that, it's like, I don't know, someone said, oh wow, people in Brazil speak Spanish. Like, no, they speak Portuguese, right? So it's, so we have to educate ourselves. We have to go out there and acquire that knowledge so that we're well informed in making the decisions that we need to make. So I think there are biases when it comes to like, okay, you have your intrinsic barriers, but also it is as a result of the barriers that biases that you have experienced. And people use that term unconscious bias. I don't agree with that. I don't agree. I say it is conscious. That is how I say it. I say it's conscious bias because you know exactly what you're doing, right? Most people know what
choice.
You have a choice, but you've decided to go down that path. So so I think we have those intrinsic barriers because of the experiences that we've had. But what I'm trying to work when I'm working with the women is to say, yes, you've had that experience, so what? Are you going to let that stop you? No, you can't let that stop you. You have to take the next step. What did you learn from that experience? All right, use that to go forward, as opposed to just being static and just staying where you are,
Yeah, absolutely. And so I suppose this might be a bit of a difficult question, but so these women that you have as boardroom participants, are they sort of at different levels of management as well? You did deal with the age question, but so I assume that they are from different management levels, and because of their own sort of self-bias, they are held back by their belief that they are not able to transcend and actually climb the corporate ladder. Is that something that you would say is true?
Yeah, and I'll share this story without naming names. There was one person that I worked with, and they had been in this organization for 10 years, and they're colored women, right? They've been in the organization for 10 years. They've coached and mentored a whole lot of people that have come through them, and those people are really thriving and succeeding in their roles. And then it came time for a restructure within the organization, and she was selected to be made redundant, right? And all these people that have passed through her, that she has equipped with all this knowledge and training and coaching and mentoring, we're still there and thriving and succeeding. And yep, she's out the door, right? And when we got together and I said, what do you think? Why do you think that happened? I mean, you're really good at what you do, but why do you think that happened? And the person said, well, I think it was because I did not take credit for the work that I did, because I allowed other people to take credit for it. So I'm like, why did that happen? Well, culturally, we don't really like to sound our own trumpet, right? we don't say, hey, look at me, I did this today and I did that today. So this person was really humble, humility, right? But the other people, everybody else was like, yeah, well, look at this project, I did that. So they ended up being made redundant from the organization. So I said, well, it's sad, but there is a lesson there, right? So the reason why I'm sharing that story is that we don't take credit enough for what we do as Black or colored women. We're just too humble. We just don't want to, lift ourselves up and say, well, this is what I actually accomplished today or this year. I think we need to do more of that. I think we need to take pride in all the things that we've accomplished and to put it out there so that people see, especially if that would lead to a promotion, to you taking that next step, right? It means it's relevant for you to showcase what you've done, and I'm also guilty of it. Honestly, I am guilty of it. I don't do it enough because I feel like I don't want to look like I'm proud and I want everybody to know. So I don't know. I think it's a cultural thing, because growing up in Africa, my mom always said, oh, you don't have to sound your own trumpet. Somebody else will sound it for you, So I think there is that. And it's something that we, or I, and everybody else that feels they fall into that space has to unlearn. We have to unlearn that and to take pride in the work that we do. And if it requires us putting it out there for people to see, let's do it. Let's not feel like we are imposters, feeling like, oh no, I shouldn't do that because, so yeah, that was quite like an interesting encounter with the person. And I said, well, there is a lesson here. And moving forward, you will know what to do when the next opportunity comes. But that is an example of how I suppose colored women and Black women, and from my research that came through as well, that, oh, we don't want to speak up about our successes. Well, people look for that, right? That's why they hire you. That's why they pick you on for projects, because they want to see what you've accomplished. So yeah, that was quite interesting. So some things like that, yeah, that we need to be more visible and show ourselves and just show up. I think it's really important that we show up and say, hey, this is what we've done this year, or this project, we worked on this project. I'm still learning because it is not my culture. So I'm still like, and even when I want to put something on LinkedIn, I'll sit there, look at it for a while and reread it and think, oh, how are people going to respond to this? You see, but some people don't care, just like bang, it's gone, right? But I'm always like, should I post this? Should I delete? So so I don't know, it's a cultural thing, but I'm learning to kind of just do it,
No, absolutely. And I think that you're so right. We don't take credit for what we do. And, if you don't take the credit, somebody else is going to take it for you. So you may as well. And I understand what you're saying about humility and being humble. And it is something that I also agree with, that you should be humble. But at the same time, you should also talk about what you've done and accomplished. And yeah, and I don't think that those two things are necessarily disparate or completely polar opposites or something. You can do both. And it doesn't have to be done in this very verbose or boastful way.
Yeah.
So I think women would do a lot better just to realize that, it's not so cut and dried. You can actually have your pie and eat it, I suppose. And yeah, so the one thing I did want to ask you as well is, what advice would you give for women who wanted to start committees or even just sort of informal groups who would like to set up groups to discuss the issues that you have brought to the fore now? And if you could give them some pointers and just some general tips on how to get started and what to do.
Yeah. No, I'll say, first of all, find something that interests you, right? Because governance is so broad. So what are you passionate about? Are you passionate about equality, about discrimination, about health, education? Find something that interests you, and then look for opportunities in those spaces, right? So it's sort of like you have to take a targeted approach. If you're interested in education, well, you can start with the local school board, right? You can walk in there and say, I'm interested, and connect with somebody so that if there's something coming up, they have your details. The first step is getting yourself out of your own head, right? And into the spaces where you want to be, all right? I shared that thing about LinkedIn. When I want to post something, I will sit there and, I have to get it out. We have to get it out. We have to get ourselves, whatever is in our head has to come out, right? So I think the first thing is really find that area, or find the things that you're interested in, or that, and you have to want to make some kind of improvement in those spaces, right? It may be that the school, I don't know, the around the school there's no safety when kids are crossing the road, or you see kids just hanging around the street and there's no one looking after them. Find something that you're interested in, and then go and speak to the people and say you're interested in participating in committees, PTA, governance, whatever, right? And have a governance CV, because it's really different from a normal CV. But it's always good to start volunteering first, because if you really want to get into it, you have to have some kind of experience, and you will get that experience from volunteering in local organization. If you're a Christian, they have like the parish council, they have committees in the church. If you're a Muslim, they might have also committees that look after the organization. So you will start volunteering first. It's really important that you volunteer so that you have that experience. If you are a seasoned board member and you've done it before, then you will know that that really helps with your CV, governance CV, right? So I would say, yeah, just make the start by approaching people. There are lots of workshops or free workshops in New Zealand. We have quite a lot of, free workshops that you can attend. There are also organizations like non-for-profit organizations that, as you know, you can be part of. There are also paid ones that you can be part of. So there are many ways that you can start this governance journey if you are interested. Well, how did I start mine? I started by volunteering in my church, right, in the committee. And that's where I learned about what is governance, what is it all about? And eventually, when I founded my own non-for-profit organization, I knew exactly what to do. I knew exactly how governance works because I've had that experience. So I think, once you start volunteering, and from volunteering, you'll meet other people. It's really about networking as well. But I think the most important thing is to be confident in asking people and saying, hey, I'm interested in participating. Just let me know when something comes up. So it's really pushing yourself to do that because it will not come to you, especially if you're not known in that space. So it's more like you pushing yourself out and seeking opportunities, just like you would if you want a job. Or if you're a business person, you want to put stuff out there because you have services to offer. So you want to promote it so people can see it and come to you. You can't just build a website and expect people to come to your website. No, you have to optimize the website. You have to promote it, right? You have to try and get it out there. So it's the same thing. They just use the same approach here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's excellent advice. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. That was very enlightening. And I think that it's also very practical advice, very sensible advice. And and I think that the other thing is, just live the life that you want to set an example for others. So if you're going to go into governance, then don't do things that, where you are clearly breaking the law. And however innocuous it may seem to you, you have to be a figurehead in the community, and you need to actually, live your values, and people have to see you living your values. So that is also something that perhaps people don't always realize, is that once you're in the public eye, you are actually in the public eye. And that's something that you need to be prepared for, because people are going to call you out, perhaps if you're not actually living your values, or you claim to live, some values, but you don't really follow them yourself.
No, that is true. And you're representing, especially also, you're representing not just yourself, you're representing the organization, right? You are the organization. So you have to really think about that, and be, just have that positive nature, and don't do anything that would discredit yourself as well as the organization that you represent. So it's really, really, really important. Yeah.
Well, I'd just like to thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure everybody who listens to this talk does as well. And so I'd like to ask you, what is the best way of reaching you? I know that you've mentioned LinkedIn, and I will obviously share your LinkedIn profile link as well as your email. Yeah. Is there another preferred method that people can reach you on, or would you prefer?
LinkedIn is fine. Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, and just hook me up there. So I'm active there. So makes it easier. I've just consolidated the whole social media into LinkedIn, because I just want to focus on that. So that and email, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I know everybody else does as well. And yes, we will. I look forward to connecting with you at another stage. I think that we'll continue to have wonderful conversations and very enlightening conversations. So I look forward to chatting to you again. And I will see you soon, hopefully.
Thank you. It's been really lovely to be here and share some insights. And I hope people get value from it, and just really understanding that some of the things that we do may be biased, and yeah, just being self-aware. But it's been lovely chatting with you, and definitely we'll keep in touch and we'll talk some more, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'll speak to you again. Bye-bye.